Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. At the beginning of June, we were invited to moderate a panel at the Zuckerberg Initiative Rare as One annual meeting in San Diego, California. Most of the time, diagnosis of a rare disease comes out of the blue and includes life-altering and life-shortening symptoms, the effect of which leave family members and friends to manage care and figure out how they might solve the problem. Many times, this means starting a nonprofit organization to advance science toward a treatment and a cure. Patients, parents, and friends run these organizations with little to no budget or training. These heroic efforts make slow progress while testing the resolve of their leaders who are constantly operating at the edge of their emotional and physical capacity. The CZI Rare as One program provides funding and training to build or expand research networks, as well as increase organizational infrastructure to support this important work. The program started in 2019, and this was the first in-person meeting of the 50 grantee organizations that make up the Rare as One network. It was an emotional time as the grantees continued to learn and laugh together in 3D instead of through a screen. We had the opportunity to moderate the closing session to talk about the incredible progress to date and the future of the program with three leaders of Rare as One. Vice President, Science and Society at CZI, Tanya Simoncelli, Rare as One Program Manager, Heidi Bjornson-Pannell, and Rare as One Program Associate, Andrew Stratton. Enjoy the conversation.
Sometimes when I'm talking about my friends, Sean and Kyle, I refer to them properly by brand as the Two Disabled Dudes. And in some crowds, people really not quite sure about the fact that I just said my friends, the Two Disabled Dudes. But I believe in marketing, and I also believe in these guys. We're really thrilled to have them here with us to talk about Rare as One. Sean and Kyle.
As the two most obviously qualified people in the room, we're here to talk about DEI. So just bear with us here while we we're really honored to be here with all of you. For me, it's been an amazing week of connecting with many like-minded individuals with huge aspirations and just learning from each other. It's really amazing. So I was diagnosed with Friedreich's ataxia when I was 17 years old. Much like all of you, I'd never heard of the words Friedreich's ataxia before that point, and my family and I were scared. We found out that it would only be a matter of time before I'm in a wheelchair. It would only be a matter of time before I lose all ability to take care of myself, and it would only be a matter of time before my heart fails and I suffer a premature death. Everyone in the room here knows that that's kind of a bummer. In 2007, I did a bike ride with my family. We rode from San Diego to Memphis, Tennessee. It was 2,500 miles in 59 days, and I wrote a blog post every 3 days during that trip. And it was my first introduction into community engagement. Everyone just telling us, keep going, you can do it. And that's what we're all here for, right? In 2010, Sean and I put together a team for the world's toughest bike race. It's the Race Across America. It's a 3,000-mile race from San Diego to Annapolis, Maryland, and you have to finish in less than 9 days. So our team rode 24 hours a day at an average speed of 14 miles per hour to get the race done. And that's really where Sean and I connected. There's a great documentary about it if any of you want to check it out. It's called The Ataxian. It's on YouTube. So Sean and I met because we have Friedreich's ataxia, this terrible disease, but we really connect. And our friendship is based on the fact that we want to live life beyond circumstances, no matter what those are. If it's a rare disease or financial problems or whatever it is, we want to find a way to get what we want out of life.
I was diagnosed with the same condition, Friedreich's ataxia, in 2007, the same year Kyle did that initial bike ride. And at the time, we lived in the same city. So, of course, like many of us, first thing you do after such a diagnosis, you get on Google. And I discovered Kyle's name all over local news, and I thought, who in the world is this guy? And then, of course, later on, I think we matched on Tinder or Grindr or one of those. I don't remember exactly. But we became friends. I convinced him to meet me for a beer and a pizza. And at the time, I was brand new to FA. And meeting him, of course, the first thing he did was order like 18 beers for himself. And I thought, is that okay? It's going to make things worse, isn't it? And of course, I had a lot to learn. And that's certainly what we've done over the years is help each other learn and grow. And beyond the bike rides and the film and all these different things, like Kyle said, the fact that we connect so well is really on the shared value of living beyond our circumstances and not necessarily finding easy, like Riley posted on her graduation cap, but finding possible and finding ways to move forward despite what we're up against. And that's exactly what we talk about on our weekly podcast. We've been podcasting now for over 5 years. We have 185 episodes, and we're excited about not only those episodes, but events like this. 3 or 4 years ago, we also started doing some public live and virtual forums just like this one. In fact, not only are we excited to be here, we're also excited to see many friends that have been on the show before, like Luke or Andrea, and Katie Stevens is running around somewhere. And I've seen Nina across the room, but I haven't had the chance to give her a hug yet. But all kinds of different people in the audience that have been on our show. We're honored to hang out with you again in San Diego.
Yeah, we met a lot of you here in San Diego. 2019 at the Global Genes Conference that was here. And, we have a lot of amazing people in this community, super powerful and gritty. But I think we're a little pretentious. We only attend meetings at like the most beautiful place in the world. I think we need to work on that a little bit.
We'll never say no to a gig in San Diego.
Yeah.
In all reality, we recognize that just like you, and well, I don't want to speak for you, but we're just a bunch of regular people doing extraordinary things, in my opinion. We're just making things happen, trying to connect the dots, and like you, working towards treatments and cures. And I love reading the board outside about our hopes. And a couple of the things written is just extraordinary care in the meantime. And I love reading those things because not only do we have a job to do long-term and big-term, but we have a lot of right now issues that we all need to take care of. Besides all of these things, It's always fun to connect and talk about what we're up against and some of the accomplishments that we're experiencing so that we can further inspire one another and leave today feeling invigorated and motivated to continue our work tomorrow. You know, before we get too far though, I do want to give Kyle a hard time because, you know, a couple weeks ago I asked him, hey, you know, you want to connect on a phone call? We have some things to work on and plans. He was like, oh, I'm busy. And I'm like, all right, fine. But then all of a sudden he's conveniently available to be in San Diego for 3 days. and I feel like you showed up Sunday and I've hung out for 3 or 4 days now simply because it's San Diego. And I just wanted to throw that out.
Talk about being prepared and ready to go. You just showed up last night, though. What's up with that?
Well, some of us have real jobs, Kyle. In all reality, while I've got the microphone and your attention, I actually wanted to make sure everybody knows you can find me on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. You can follow me there. I would love a few new followers. I think I even started a TikTok recently.
This happens every time he gets the microphone. I don't know. Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on. The whole reason why we're here today is to interview a few of our friends, new friends and old friends alike. So please welcome with me to the stage our friends Andrea, Tanya, and Heidi.
So, ladies, we wanted to start with a little introduction. I know that all of you guys have become close over the last couple of years. There are some things, though, I hear that maybe people don't know, and we really wanted to get to the bottom of why you're so drawn to your work in rare disease and what you love about what you do. So could you each please explain your connection to rare disease?
So I have kind of a weird background. Like several people over the course of this conference talked about like they never planned to do what they're doing and sort of came upon things by chance, and all rare disease leaders we know certainly never planned to do this work. And sort of similarly, I had a very interdisciplinary background, and I sort of never could figure out what I actually wanted to do. And my background was in science, policy, and advocacy, and my early part of my career was actually more an environmental side of things. And I got sort of increasingly interested in the life sciences as sort of the genetics, sort of the biotech revolution was sort of happening. And I ended up taking a job. I was actually about to go get a PhD, and I was offered this job at the ACLU as their first ever science advisor. And I just thought this was like the coolest sounding job, like to get to sort of advise this really important, at this point, like 80-year-old institution on like emerging life sciences questions and think of them in a civil liberties framework was super interesting to me. And so I bailed on the PhD, much to MIT's disappointment, and I moved to New York, and I took this role, and this issue that I had been really passionate about for a long time, I was absolutely furious about this, the fact that the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office had allowed patents on human genes, and really on all genes, naturally occurring DNA sequences since the early 80s, and human genes started being patented in the mid-90s. And so soon after I got to the ACLU, I started to have conversations about, like, we should do something about this. Like, no one can do anything about this except the ACLU. You guys are like kind of like a public interest law firm. This is a civil liberties issue. And they all looked at me like I was nuts. And because they had never done anything in patent law, they'd never done anything in genomics. And somehow, over the course of a couple of years, I persuaded the ACLU to build this case. And this was the AMP versus Myriad Genetics case that ended up ultimately going to the Supreme Court. And somehow we actually won this case. And the reason I think we actually... But how it gets to rare disease is the reason I think we actually won this case is from the very beginning, we set out to frame this as an issue that had real impacts on patients and patients' lives. And patients, we put patients at the center of the case. We actually named patients as plaintiffs in the case. And it was actually legally, they didn't have the strongest standing. I mean, it's hard to explain. It was hard to make that argument legally, but we thought it was absolutely critical to the case to actually show how this, what some people were going to frame as this like extremely obscure issue in patent law, was having direct impacts on the ability of patients to actually learn something about themselves and get access to testing. And throughout the case, it just became clear that that narrative, that storyline, that like demonstrating that these policies, that the way we were going about science and innovation in genomics and in biomedical like research and innovation had real implications for patients, and we weren't going about it the right way, and it was patients who had to be at the center of the case to tell their stories to actually change this law. And I think that's how we got there. And so ever since then, throughout my career, I've really been trying to turn things kind of upside down and around and say, like, we have to look at this through the lens of patients. We have to look at sort of what is wrong with biomedical research and innovation as it's occurring today. Why is it not delivering? And I think the answer is we have to listen to patient communities, because they're the ones who are experiencing the diseases. And I think if we can change our system to become much more patient-centric, we will actually make science happen faster. And so that's really how I came to this, and I think it's especially true in rare. And so we built this program starting with rare disease, because these are diseases that the incentives are just not there, and we need patient communities to galvanize researchers to actually build research and enabling infrastructure and actually really make research happen faster. And so that's kind of how I came around to this. I did lots of things in between then, but in some ways that was sort of the kernel of sort of me changing my sort of the way that I viewed how we need to drive systemic change in the system.
I imagine that kind of finish line or accomplishment is addicting. And I love that you're putting your energy into impacting communities like the ones you represent here today. Thank you.
I get so caught up listening to you, Tanya, that I'm like, yes, yes, and then I forget, oh yeah, I have to talk in a second. So I was a barrister in England doing human rights law, and then moved back with my husband to the United States and was a public defender representing clients on death row in California. So I had a very different life when my first two children were born. I have three children. My first child was very healthy. I had my second child, my daughter, and she was sick a lot. We were in the emergency room at night all the time with a fever that was spiking, and then we'd go to they'd say something, and then we'd be in the doctor's office the next day, and they'd say something. It was just like a constant cycle. But the basic message was that, she was just picking up lots of viruses from her older brother, and it seemed not really right to me because, he was pretty healthy and she was sicker than all of her kind of fellow little kids and babies. But we had a third child who was instantly very ill, and we knew that there was something wrong. And so we started a long diagnostic odyssey, which frankly still continues today. We have a diagnosis, but we don't have a genetic diagnosis. So we are still searching for the gene that is the cause of our children's quite severe illness. And so this whole process ended up with me ultimately leaving my work as a lawyer and wanting to dedicate myself to this space to really accelerate research in rare disease. Obviously that started in my children's own disease area, but as I have spent time in this space, it became very clear to me that our challenges were all common, that we need to shorten this diagnostic odyssey for everybody. We need to accelerate research. The patient organizations are leading and driving this work. That was an experience I immediately had as I reached out and found the PCD Foundation online and joined that community, that they were the ones that were really driving forward research in this space. And obviously we see that here with all of you and many other organizations beyond this network. But there's major challenges. There's lack of funding. There's lack of capacity building and support for these organizations. There's lack of infrastructure to share data, to really accelerate the research that needs to happen. And so I'm just so grateful to CZI and Tanya for, really starting to lead the way in this space. And it's a privilege to work with every one of you. I am so inspired by the work that you all do, and I really think that together we are going to move mountains. So,
yeah, I've got my own.
You're dangerous with that thing.
So I started my career as a bodybuilder.
Put a pen in it right there.
Oh, you ruined my joke, Sean. You ruined my joke. Whose show is this? Who is it? Go ahead. No, please, go. Your turn.
All I got.
Yeah, all right. So, as I was saying, I started my career as a bodybuilder. It's no longer funny. I did not. Everyone's heard my story, and I don't want to repeat, and there's such valuable time and such incredible passion. But we talk about storytelling a lot with Cycle 1 and Cycle 2, and I was working with a storyteller, and I explained that I have a rare disease. I was diagnosed when I was 37 after blah, 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 blah. It was, long, very serious and difficult diagnostic journey, but you've heard some of it. And he said, yeah, but why do you do? And I do what you do. And I said, well, look at these. Look at the need out there. He said, okay, fine. There's a lot of need out there. Why do you do what you do? I think then we could have a whole therapy session. I think that's probably not a good idea. We've already had group support earlier this week. I don't know. My dad, he's tough. He was born with the disease, and he wasn't diagnosed until I was diagnosed. Vietnam vet, an artist. I grew up really poor. My parents were brilliant at what they did, but what they did not make a lot of money at the time. My mom died when I was 11. My dad charged forward. I just learned that whatever you do, you just be the best at it. So if you're going to have a rare disease, I'm going to be the best darn person with lipodystrophy that I could possibly be. And then I got a little tired of that. It's exhausting not to have any stored energy. So I decided that I wanted to be the best advocate for other people. And that's where I get my energy. And so that's why I do what I do.
Thank you.
And you wonder why we hired you?
You probably still wonder.
I'm a little jealous that Kyle's been here for a few days, and I've met a few people last night and this morning, and I've heard some fun stories about the last couple days of the convening. And knowing that this is the first time the group has come together face to face, it's probably the first time many of you have been scarred with the Andrew's dance moves.
Or blessed,
Or blessed, yeah, depends how you look at it. What I'm curious to hear from each of you is perhaps one or two takeaways just from the last 3 days. Something that either has impressed upon you, said, yes, this time is worth it, or yes, I'm so glad we're all here because of X, Y, or Z. Can you tell us one or two takeaways that you're excited to go home in your memory bank with?
So many. It's been amazing seeing everyone come together. And, Tanya said to me before this meeting, it's okay to say what you said, that if I just showed up at this meeting, it would be fine. And because you're all together. And I think that has been the most powerful thing, is just seeing everyone together, seeing and observing, just all of the connections that are taking place, all of the sharing that's taking place. It is so incredible to see. And, one of the things I loved the most was the poster session last night, seeing patients really leading the way, what we know you do, but just driving research forward in your disease areas, sharing the knowledge with one another, with the other researchers here. I just thought it was so inspiring. And beyond all the learnings and sharing, resources and just really specific things that see people sharing with one another, I'm seeing people like actually try to help accelerate each other's science, like in real ways, like really like doing the science for them. I was in a breakout yesterday on developing diagnostic guidelines, and one of the attendees in the breakout said that they didn't have an assay, and at the reception, an hour later, he came up to me like visibly moved, saying a researcher that was here in attendance is working on developing an assay for them now. And so I was just like, this is insane. And then I heard it again yesterday that sitting down at a table that inspired by Helene's talk from the Wilhelm Foundation, another researcher said that he was going to open up his biobank and help assist in that regard. So I'm just blown away by how people are supporting one another, looking for synergies, working together. I just think it's incredible. And congratulations to all of you for being such amazing people.
Yeah, that was like totally amazing. I think one of the most, well, I said when my opening that one of the most, the takeaway that I'm going to like never forget for the rest of my life was just the moment that I arrived and saw and walked out onto that terrace when I said this in my opening remarks and saw just the energy outside at that reception was so extraordinary. Like there is nothing like that. Like this community just has, I mean, and I know you guys work so well together, but seeing it just in person for the first time was so extraordinary. And to sort of double down on what Heidi just said, it was like this whole 3 days, there was just like collaboration happening in real time that was so validating for us who have been kind of working, like we know that there's this network effect and we saw it actually happening throughout the 3 days. And, we started the meeting with these, 4 stories of, success stories in patient-driven research and people that have done like really great work and just such amazing work. And Josh talking about this absolute dearth of infrastructure that was in his disease area. And several of the people on that panel saying, like, I wish I had known now when I started, like it took me 10 years to learn this and you guys can go faster. And you guys are going so much faster. I mean, you're doing in 2 years what a lot of those groups did in 10 just by, not because of us, because you're working together, because you're collaborating. And to see that happening in real time I just can't even tell you how inspiring that was for me. And then the other thing, which I think builds on what Heidi just said, is a lot of the researchers and clinicians in the room have come up to me over the last couple of days like this and said things along the lines of, this has changed like how I do my work, like working with patient communities, like I'm never going back. And so I feel like that to me is so meaningful because we're trying to change the culture of science. I mean, this is about changing the way science is done and at least having some science that is done in this way, right? We think is really important. And so that to me was just really inspiring and something I'll really take away as an important moment.
It's huge. Andrea, anything sticking out for you?
The hugs. The hugs. I got a lot of hugs. I didn't get enough hugs, by the way. We have more time for hugs. I get to work with these people all the time. Nothing surprised me. Nothing shocked me. They can't. I mean, they can move mountains. So I'll look one way and there's a mountain and tomorrow there will not be one. So I'm going to just stick with the hugs.
Love it. Love it.
And Ron is so tall.
He is tall.
Yeah.
And Jennifer is so short.
Andrea.
Yes, there are some short and tall people in this community.
It's weird.
3D is so different from online. And even though we can do so much like virtually, like 3D, it's just different.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Rare as One was developed out of some observations that patient-driven research and patient-driven organizations make absolutely quicker progress to the end goal. So can you guys talk about maybe a couple of the observations you've had so far at how the progress is being made in the last 2 years?
I mean, I think this is still a really young program, right? CZI is 5 years old. This is really new. And I think it's really different. I mean, I don't think there's really other programs quite like this. We set out to build an incubator to sort of help build capacity into organizations because we believe that this would accelerate research. And I think what's really exciting is we really are seeing that it works. You guys, I mean, I know there are still incredible challenges, and I don't want to underestimate those challenges, but we're seeing, and we just saw it on the last panel, like there's so much progress being made in a very short time. And I think that we've already proven the model to some degree. So that's really exciting. I think we are seeing this extraordinary network effect that I alluded to already, like that it's really about how you're working together and collaborating that is actually making all the difference. And then I think we're also seeing that this approach of having a group of organizations work together and learn from one another, that this is a critical test bed for testing new solutions. And, and in some ways, even though lots of groups have come before us, we still don't really know how to do this. We're still all learning as a community. And so one of the things that's been really exciting for us, I think, we're trying to think about what is scalable? What are the things that really work? And I think that this network is really providing, we're able to sort of try out new partnerships, like the Komodo Health partnership that we just launched this year. And we're not sure, if that's going to work or not, but this is great. It's like a test bed for developing new tools, trying new solutions, and then we can see which of those work and decide as a community, and then figure out how to scale some of those approaches to people who are not in this network. And we ultimately want to serve the broader rare disease community. So I think all three of those things I think we're already seeing that in such a short time, and that's all a testament to all of you.
Yeah. The other thing that I would say is that we are seeing so many synergies across all of your organizations and disease areas and work, which of course we knew would be the case, which is why we thought it would be valuable to build a network like this. But I think one of the things we're really starting to think about a lot is how can we build on those synergies, not just within the network, but as Tanya was saying, how can we think about the development of tools that can help elucidate those synergies and, where this can really become a more scalable approach to more quickly be able to identify the people, the tools, the resources that you need to really drive forward progress. And then I think the other thing that we're really seeing, and we saw this morning in the talks, is the importance of capacity building and the importance of funding. The number of you that have brought on research coordinators and development directors or whoever it is that you've managed to hire and kind of infuse into your organization, we've seen incredible progress take place, as Tanya says, just in this very short time period from having those additional resources and then the trainings that Andra's really been leading and that have really supported you in working with those resources. So that's been fantastic to see.
Yeah, I would say no surprise to a lot of you, just very basically, having someone that can help you do the things that suck your energy allows you to do the things that fuel you, that you're really good at. So shout out to our training advisory committee if they're listening and watching. I know they're completely committed to you. So just a little bit of resources in this community goes a really long way.
Something that struck me when I was talking to everybody in the last few days was, those energy suck things can be a total roadblock and they can be blinders. And just the resources and training that you provide really opens everything up, and everyone's thinking so huge now. It is an absolute boost of ambition. Everyone's like, no, this is not impossible. We just need to figure out how to do this. Just like Riley said on her cap and gown. That's one thing that really struck me about this model, is that it really is working because people are thinking huge now.
I think on the more personal, human side of it, you alluded, Tanya, to, not knowing how the Komodo partnership is going to work out. We just don't know how things are going to flesh out in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 6 months. And one thing we talk about often on the podcast is even beyond the resources, just sitting down and talking to somebody about what you're up against takes the power away from that challenge and allows everybody to maybe put on a different lens or a different perspective of how we can go about moving that mountain. So there's so much power in just having the conversations where, people are in this together. People have your back. Maybe people have experienced it before. And even if we haven't, we're gonna hold hands and figure it out as we go together. You guys, there's a lot of strategic planning that goes into a convening for a few days for a couple hundred people in San Diego, but also in organizations with CZI, even personal advocacy work that you've done, Andrea, maybe you guys have done and participated in over the years too. But I'm curious about, just given what we all recognize over the last couple of years is kind of a wrench in things. How do you plan strategically while also leaving room for the unknowns or for the things that might not work out or might derail you a little bit? How much of it is planning for those unknowns, and how much of it is being flexible and allowing room for creativity and ingenuity at the same time? Good luck.
Yeah, that's well, I guess where I would start with that is that I think CZI, again, is a very young philanthropic organization, and we have sort of a pretty unique philosophy and approach, I think, which is, first of all, we believe that the solutions to problems really lie with the communities who are impacted by them. So this patient-driven research model really fits with that philosophy, right? That we want to listen to the communities, and so and build our strategies from what we're hearing from communities who are experiencing the problems we're trying to solve. And then we think about unlike sort of traditional philanthropic organization, we don't just use grant making. We just don't throw dollars at problems. We actually really think about how to leverage a combination of grant making and technology and science and community-based solutions. And so where I'm going with this is like, I think it's a pretty innovative approach. It's actually what drew me to the organization. I thought like, wow, that's really interesting. And I felt like I could actually build a program around the interests and needs of patients with that, under that philosophy. But it also means that we have to be nimble. Like we cannot, there's no way we are kind of making a little bit up as we go along by listening, by continuing to listen, by figuring out how to iterate, testing solutions and then seeing it, checking in like a year, does that work? And if it doesn't, we have to be able to change course. And it's hard. It's hard to grow as an organization and stay nimble. You guys know institutions it's hard. It's not going to be an easy thing to navigate, and we'll welcome your feedback as we try to figure out how to do this. But it's all new, and it's all, but I think that's sort of what's hard. And I think the other part that's really hard is we want to build the program around the interests and needs of the communities we're trying to serve. But we have this 80-year goal of curing, managing, preventing all disease, right? So we both want to serve the communities we're trying to serve, but we also have to keep our eye on the longer term, on what is scalable, how do we lift all boats? And that is really hard, and sometimes it comes into tension. Like, we can't be everything we want to be for every single grantee in this room, across all our other, our grant, we know there are so many needs, but we have to find kind of that sweet spot of basically trying to find ways we can help our grantees, but also be working towards this kind of longer term, systemic change that we all need, where we can all benefit. And so that's really hard with this kind of mapping of sort of, and kind of gets at that tension between kind of longer term strategy versus meeting the shorter term needs of our grantees, that I think we all as a team are really cognizant of and really working to try to find that right balance.
Yeah, I totally second everything Tanya just said. And I would also only add that I think one of the strengths of this network is that we have, organizations, individuals within it who bring so many different skills and strengths to the table, so many different experiences. Some of you have developed registries, some of you have developed centers of excellence, some of you are working on, scaling genetic testing, whatever you're doing. Everyone has knowledge to share, and specific skill sets to share, whether it's in fundraising or working with research communities. And so we really want to maximize those skills and learnings across the network. At the same time, what everybody has to is at the same time as everyone has so much to offer, everyone has different needs. And so I think figuring out how we identify what we can offer that is scalable is a good challenge. and so that's something we're working on and constantly kind of testing and iterating on.
Well, just like our grantees, just like you all, it takes a village, it takes a team, it takes capacity. And I think that that's true for us as a team as well. We're actually a small and mighty team as well. And fortunately, they're the strategists and I'm the doer a lot of the time. But the best part, I think, of how we change.
I do.
I hope we do
that's
something.
true. I mean, right. They just spend their days in San Diego. I mean, we invited you here. This is all the time for them. No. Okay. Well, so there's this. It's humor, right? How do you adjust? It's something that goes wrong, something goes unexpectedly, and we just pivot, but we talk it through. I think that, we're brand new. And 2 years ago, the conversations we had are different than the conversations we have now, and in some ways very similar. I think the key, though, is taking our experience as advocates, as parents with children with rare disease, with incredible strategy and background in both hands, as a patient, and just listening and adjusting where we can, knowing that we won't be able to make everyone happy all the time. And I think at first, particularly for Heidi and I, but certainly for Tanya, that was hard to know that we couldn't meet every single need. And I feel like the more I recognize that, the better we are doing it at narrowing down. And I think that the smaller our focus can be at getting something really right, will then allow us to help you do a lot more really right.
So, cure, prevent, or manage all disease by the end of the century. That sounds crazy, but we've seen so much progress that we've heard about, that we've been talking about. And so how does all this progress in Rare's One fit into that vision of curing all disease?
Good luck with that one, too.
Yeah.
So it's definitely an ambitious, you could even say an audacious goal. But I love this mission. Like at first I was a little bit, I'm going to be honest, I was a little skeptical when I first heard that. I was like, really? Like that's absurd.
Yeah.
But you know what I love about it? When you focus on something way out here, it changes your perspective. You have to think about the systemic changes that are needed in this, like you have to work at a systems level and you have to think, systems change, you have to think culture change, and you have to think about identifying things that can be scalable solutions. And I think it's also helpful to think at this level, like that we need both. What we need to be starting to do is to marry sort of shorter term gains and goals with where we really want to get to. And I think it's so hard for most organizations to think way out here And it's a total privilege to work for an organization that is trying to that as an experiment, to really think all the way out here. It changes your whole way of thinking. And I think it's fascinating, but it's also like it's getting me to think about things differently, getting us to think about this network differently, getting us to think about kind of what we do every day, right? And how we are approaching different problems. And so I think there's something really special in that. And how Rare as One fits into that is like, I truly believe that we won't reach that goal unless we can build a more patient-centric biomedical research ecosystem. And it starts with empowering patient communities to drive those systemic changes. Those are not going to occur without building a broader movement in rare disease and a really effective movement that can actually demand the changes, just like we demanded the change in the patent policy. Like that has to happen 50 million times over to get to where we have a system that is actually functioning on behalf of patient communities. And so I think that's how it fits in. And then, and I think we also have to acknowledge where traditional academic research model is failing. It's just not meeting the needs of patient communities, and you can see it all over the place in rare disease. They're just not the right incentives. They're not well aligned to work on these diseases. It's only by, helping patient communities. They shouldn't have to do this work, but right now they have to do the work. They have to bridge that gap and help build that research enabling infrastructure to get researchers interested in their disease, to change that paradigm, to change the possibility for their diseases. And you guys are really doing that work. And so I think that's how it fits in. I think we simply do not reach the goal of curing, managing, or preventing all disease. Most diseases are rare. We're not going to get there unless we really change the system. And I think this is this really small way that we're starting, but I think it's meaningful.
You talk about a goal being ambitious, and although I wasn't around, some of you may have been. I think it was John F. Kennedy that shocked the world when he said, we're going to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. And there were a lot of people that didn't believe that was even possible. I mean, we were struggling to get a rocket off the ground at the time. At least the U.S. was. And then to put Armstrong and the other guys on the moon several years later, obviously things are possible. They're not going to be easy. But when you get a whole bunch of people that work together, the sky's the limit. And that just speaks to me. So I love that you shared that. Heidi, anything you want to add?
I love what you just said. Just to say, when Mark and Priscilla announced their mission to cure, prevent, manage all disease, or to help support the science and technology to cure, prevent, manage all disease by the end of the century, I actually saw that at home on my living room couch on Facebook, where I shouldn't spend so much time. And I never, ever, ever like the posts of, big people and companies or anything. I never comment on anything like that. And just you guys, you're the only ones that get my likes and comments. And I actually liked that post. I'm like, I am going to put a yes on that. And I even wrote a comment to them. So I was just so inspired by that mission. I actually didn't say that, but I did come to CZI, as you know. And so, yes, I'm just deeply inspired by this mission, and I really do believe it's possible. I really think, what everything Tanya just said about the type of infrastructure change that has to happen, about the type of policy change that has to happen, how critical it is that patients are driving this work and are centered in all of this work. But I would just say on a very optimistic note, we are seeing this happen. This is happening in rare disease. There are drugs and treatments and cures coming in rare disease, and they are coming because patients led that work 30, 40 years ago, and began to, build these communities and start to drive this research forward. We are seeing the fruits of that. And that is, 30, 40 years feels like a long time, but I think it's going to go faster. Like, we are working together now. We are establishing these models. We're sharing these models for what this can look like. And we're driving forward that type of policy change. So I really think there's hope on the horizon for all of us. And I'm convinced that working together, sharing data, sharing knowledge, working together like you are here, that we're going to see positive results soon. So.
Andrew, I'll have you, same question, but just slightly different spin. And we heard a couple or several people mention some of the progress that they've experienced just in the last couple of years, but you have the chance of interacting with everybody on a regular basis. Are there any, one or two that stick out in terms of accomplishments or wins or things where we're seeing that goal come to fruition right now?
There are too many to point out one or two. What we're seeing across the network is the acknowledgement of the power that they have to contribute. Obviously, they believed in themselves and had the power to get to where they were, but learning from each other and really recognizing, like, wait a minute, they really do need us. They really do. And to be able to speak confidently, I think really drives everything they're doing forward faster.
Speaking of what the network is doing, we've got a solid 10 minutes and 54 seconds left. I'm going to start on your end, Andrea, and we'll work our way down. Or actually, I don't care who answers first. But can you think about whether it's personally or professionally, can you guys share a little bit from your heart or just your perspective? What hopes do you have that keep you going in the direction you're going every day? What's getting you out of bed and continuing the work that you're doing, not only with CZI and Rare's One, but even in being a mom of 2 kids, and of 3, but 2 with rare disease, and all the different moving parts that make you, what keeps you going in this space?
I'll go first. 'Cause I want y'all in my life longer.
You want more hugs?
I want more hugs. I need more Kyle Bryant and Sean and Nina and Nikki and Izzy and Riley and Savannah and Susanna. And that's it. Totally selfish.
Yeah, it's the community and the stories. So every time you guys report back something to us about an achievement, and it can be like a little thing. It doesn't have to be like a big thing. It is so meaning. It's like we just are so happy to see any small thing, any feedback, anything that you learned, some collaboration that you're excited about, some, I just love the stories that are coming out of the partnership with the Broad Institute, for example. And, I've known Sam Baxter for before she got involved in this, from years back, before I came to CZI, and she's coming up to me and saying, this is changing the way I think about my profession. Working with these communities is the best thing I have done in my career. And I can't tell you, that is when you hear this kind of feedback, you just feel like you'd throw yourself in front of a train for this community. It's the most rewarding work I have ever done. And it's just amazing. And it's the community, and it's the people, and it's my incredible partners, my incredible team. This keeps me going through anything.
That's huge.
Love it.
We do like each other.
We actually do.
A little bit.
You may not have figured that out yet.
So I came to this work because I wanted to see a different outcome for my kids. And that's not the only reason I'm here anymore. But I just want to pause there for 1 second, that I know that so many of us have hopes in that regard for ourselves, for our children. And I've seen in a short time period that there is greater hope for them. Just take the centers of excellence that now exists in our disease area. My children can move. They don't have to stay right here or right where we live, in order to get care. Like they can move around the world and get care. And in many ways, we've seen incredible progress that, will benefit their lives. We have a lot further to go. And I know most of us are working on hope for ourselves, hope for our children, hope for the communities we've built and love and care so much about and are so dedicated to. And so I come to work now every day having met all of you and just equally committed to your hope. And just really want to see all of your dreams come true in this space too. And I just want to acknowledge also that some of us in this community have lost people, and will do so as much as we are fighting to make that not happen. And, I just want us to hold those people in our hearts too. And, that we are continuing to fight in every way we can. And I find that really inspiring that we're doing what we can. So.
From an outsider's perspective, but now I feel part of this family, if you will, if I can be so bold. This has been an incredible week of getting together, maybe relaxing a little bit, enjoying the weather, enjoying each other's company. But the session this morning and this conversation really shines a light on how much tangible progress this network, all of you, are making. And we are just really, really inspired by all the work that you guys have been doing and that you guys have been helping push along. It's been an absolute honor to be here to witness that. And I went around a little bit. Some of you had got my question of, what's your 1 or 2 biggest wins from the time that you've been around in the Rare's One network? And I just wanted to highlight a few of them. Team Telomere, after 9 years at the foundation, Executive Director Katie Stevens was able to hire a program manager. That's allowed the organization to make progress. And now Katie says there's 4 Ks instead of just 1. I thought that was real tangible progress. I talked to Ron at the Yaya Foundation. He said in 1 month, they raised 6 times what they raised the entire year before because of the training and support they've received from the network. We heard from Luke and Kiv 1A this morning about how the support of the network has accelerated their scientific agenda, and they've been able to hire a scientific officer. And then there's Kristen at the Smith-Kingsmore Syndrome Foundation, and she let me know that she solved the Wordle in 4 one day. So we gotta celebrate the small things for sure, but then she hired an executive director. So just really, really huge things that this network is accomplishing.
Although the 5 of us are on stage right now, we want to take a moment before people start disappearing and leaving the resort and going back home. I think they'd agree. We're here for you. The resources, the networking, everything that exists, it's existing to make sure everybody crosses the finish line. So do me a favor and real quick, give yourselves a little applause and let's celebrate the work that you're all dedicated to making happen. Like Kyle said, and Andrew alluded to it as well, there's way too many wins to celebrate, way too many to list. We know we'd miss them even if we tried, we'd miss a couple. We recognize that we all have hard and daunting and very steep mountains in front of us. It's important to remember these little moments, these wins, these times of getting together and enjoying the view, these times of getting together and making fun of each other on the dance floor. Thank you, Ron. And Andrew. All these little things, it's important to remember why we all do what we do and what the end goal, as ambitious as it may be, what it is that we're working to accomplish, not only for our children, for our loved ones, but for our communities across the globe that are impacted by rare disease, whether it's ours or a similar one in our same disease state. We recognize that we're all up against the clock. We all have a lot of work to do, and we don't have a lot of time to get it done. So ultimately, Kyle and I want to remind you, just like we do on every episode of the Two Disabled Dudes, life is going to be better, more wins are going to be accomplished, and more work is going to be done when we all live with a sense of urgency. So please keep living with urgency in what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. This show is possible with your support. Visit twodisableddudes.com to donate.
Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app.